tutorial on kangaroo, and well, not I don't know how long it is, but I don't think it will last 3 hours. But no, so let's also take the session. You can also stay here and to practice something, and we can just talk and see if there's any troubleshooting issues you want to figure out with us. So that's the plan for today. And if you have any other kind of new ideas about the design, you can also share it with us, and we can also talk about that. So Virginia, you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. So let me share my screen. You have to allow me to share my screen, Cho.
Yeah, I think you can share now.
Okay. So I already have this Grasshopper code written from before, but I'm going to walk you through it, all of the steps to be able to create a geometry and make it inflating. So I'm just going to hide this and then walk you through what steps you can use in Grasshopper to make a geometry here. So what I usually work with when I design is some sort of Rhino geometry that I want to work with. So whether maybe you want to inflate a cube or you want to inflate maybe like a cylinder, you can pick that geometry. So based on my sizes, I think I tried to make this model in millimeters because I think people in Europe and China work in millimeters. So I made my cube about 900 millimeters or 1000 millimeters. So it's kind of about, 1 meter in size. So it has some dimension to it already that we can understand as geometry. So to bring that geometry into Grasshopper, if you are unfamiliar, the first thing you would need to do is just open Grasshopper and go ahead and grab a parameter, which in this case, since we have three-dimensional geometry, we're just going to use the BREP parameter because we're actually going to go ahead and quickly change it into a mesh. So then we will set one BREP, which is our cube, and you can see it's highlighted in green. So that means it is now set. So we just did that by right-clicking on the geometry. And I can set it here as well, which is my already prepared code, which I will send each of you as well. So what we're going to do is create a mesh out of this geometry. So to do that, we are going to just use the triangulate mesh. If I can remember which one that is, triangulate. Maybe I get it from here. Yeah, convert a BREP into a mesh. So if you didn't find that, it's under the mesh tab. Try remesh. And you can input your geometry into there. And then that has created your triangulated mesh, and you can adjust the triangles as you would like in some of the different settings here. But what you're going to need to do, I don't know what this one is. I made this a while ago. I'm so sorry that I should have checked my file to make sure I knew exactly everything I was going to do today. But then this is now a triangulated mesh that we are going to extract all of the edges and vertices from it so that we can set those to have pressure to them. So we are going to use this mesh decompose, which is, I believe, this deconstruct mesh. I highlighted, I can find it. Yeah, decompose mesh. Where is it in the tabs?
The second
This one?
one? Yeah, deconstruct mesh.
Yeah. So we use that one to deconstruct our mesh. And we can put our mesh in here. And that will give us all of the points from our triangles, as well as our faces. And from our faces, we will be able to extract all of the edges and vertices. So for this, we then collect our vertices, which are here, all of those points from our faces. So we get our face. Yeah, face vertices. Would also help if I was wearing my glasses, but that's just the boundary. You sure it's this one? The edges? No, that's the edges. Well, I think that we can, because these are the vertices here, we just want to sort them in a list. So if we look at those vertices that we get from this list, you can see that they are all sorted by our different faces here. So we have all of the vertices for each triangle. And then we want to extract those vertices into a list so that we can get the different triangles points to be able to inflate them. Back into mesh. So no, the edges, sorry. I can't seem to find this battery that I had for vertices. Oh, maybe it was.
Is it from Weaverboard?
It might be the Weaver bird one, yeah? That's why I can't find it.
But that anyone has Weaverboard installed?
Yeah, I don't know if, did you guys install Weaverbird? It's another plugin that you would need. Because I believe it's this one, the Weaverbird vertices here. Which is why it wasn't in the mesh menu when I was looking for it. That one doesn't work either though. Extract vertices. Well, I will share this code with you that I wrote that I put together before. I don't know why my memory is failing me right now, probably because it's late at night. But ideally what it does is we decompose the mesh into its vertices.
Oh, I think that one is just deconstruct phase. It's still in the mesh tab.
This one I have, yeah, the vertices though, I cannot
The
find this one.
vertices is actually the deconstruct mesh in the mesh tag.
Yeah. Oh, this one?
And go to analysis and the first one. Oh,
Yeah.
Um,
I don't have.
I think the first one is right. It's just naming differently.
Yeah, maybe it is named. I renamed it. I don't.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you use a Grasshopper file you wrote 3 years ago to teach a tutorial. Yes, so it is this one that is the vertices. So it gets all the corners from the different faces that we have here. And then we are able to extract those list items from that face to get each of the different vertices organized. So we take, to get a list item, you're going to go to sets, list item. And so the first one, we're going to want to have from the list of vertices, which is all the vertices in our face. The vertex A is the item that we are going to extract. And now you can see that only some of the vertices have lit up here and some are now red. And so we repeat that command again with a list item. And so this time is all of the vertices from the deconstruct mesh. And then we choose item B. So now we have some more of them. And we repeat again. Sorry, this is a little tedious always when you have to do this like 3 times for each of the vertices on the triangle, but take all of the vertices, and this one is C, goes into the list item. So now you can see that these items are all kind of separated out, and different ones light up when you have the different ones selected based on the color there. Okay. So what this is going to do is we're going to draw a line between these different items so that we create a new edge to be our spring. So basically what we're doing in Grasshopper is we're setting with Kangaroo these edges to be an elastic material or act as an elastic material, which is a spring. So we have all these triangulated points, and basically if we have a point here and a point here and a point here on this surface, which you could imagine could be like any triangle or whatever, we're going to draw a line from here to here, here to here, and here to here to rebuild that triangle so that we can use it as a spring. I know it kind of seems redundant because you're like, well, I already had a mesh, I could use those mesh edges, but this gets these organized in a way that's going to be useful for our Grasshopper. So the next thing then to do that is to go ahead and draw those lines. So we go ahead and we can get the curve command, which is just line. And we do it from point A and B and point B. And then another one that's going to be from B, just, oops, from the second one to the third one, and then point A to the first one. So then we have all of our curves now. So you can see that mesh triangulation on my box. That's going to give it that elasticity to be able to expand. And we can combine them just into a singular module just so it's easier to work with. And then we are going to set them as springs. So this is where Kangaroo comes in, and I have Kangaroo 2 and regular Kangaroo installed, old Kangaroo and new Kangaroo, but we're just going to use the springs from line, not from mesh, because we already kind of broke it down. So we just use the springs from line, and we put our curve in as our connection and as our rest length. So in its resting length, it is this current length here. Okay, and then so what happens now that we've made our springs, there's a few other things that we need into our geometry. So we have basically in this portion of the code, what we've done is told it that we've got a mesh and we've made it into something that is flexible. The next thing we need to do is add forces to it. So what we need to do is add some pressure. And so that will then allow you to put some force onto this geometry and give it some weight. So then just type in pressure. And there's a few different ones here. One is the old Kangaroo and one is the new Kangaroo. So I think we want this one that's acting on a triangle. You probably only have one if you only installed the Kangaroo 2, more updated version. But for this pressure, it's going to ask for all of your points. So we need to put all of our points in, which are our points from this list. Three. And then in the pressure level, we will put a slider so that we can go ahead and set that level. And that level is going to be able to adjust, and that's how you're going to get something to inflate and expand. I'm just going to leave it as kind of the default right now, and we can adjust it later. I think that my numbers here go above 0, but I think it's fine to leave it, however, just to start the test. You could even go a negative number, and then it's going to like suck your geometry in, which could be like a different feature, depending on what your design is. The other thing that you are going to need that I found in this code that you're going to want to have maybe a few anchor points. The problem I was having with it is if I had no anchor points to hold my geometry in place, I tended to inflate it and then it floated away into outer space. So I would recommend having just a few anchor points that act to hold it kind of down. And you can do that by adding just some points, which ultimately in your design might be the connection points from one geometry to another, or something like that. So I just chose 3 corners of my cube and put some points there, which I will add into Grasshopper by putting the point and right-clicking set one point. Oh, I should have set multiple points. Set multiple points. Set your multiple points, so you can see my points are now highlighted, or they were highlighted in green. So there they are, my little green points. And we set an anchor. I think this is the anchor by point, yeah. So here's our anchor, put the point in there. And again, we can set the strength with a slider to give it some strength. So all this is then going to go into a solver. So if you haven't used Kangaroo before, we have our kind of anchor points, which maybe could be gravity or something in that way. We have our forces of pressure, which is going to make it inflate. And we have our springs, so our whole geometry is now given the ability to stretch and expand and bounce around. And then we will need to put it into a solver to be able to solve that. So I'm just going to go with the regular solver for now, just so that we can see what we've got. There's different ones here. There's like the bouncy solver, the hard solver. You can also add some like grab tools and different things. I have hair in my mouth, sorry. So what you're going to do is add all those objects into the forces in your solver and your original geometry in. And then you're going to need a toggle so that it doesn't just run all the time. So we're going to first grab, I'm going to first grab a toggle and put that in here in this on off. So you got the true false, so you can toggle it on and off. We put our goal objects in, so we go and put our springs, and then we put a shift drag to add our pressure and shift drag to add our anchor points. And then we should be able to see it. We might need to have some geometry out, so because nothing is coming out of my solver. Oh, I need a toggle on reset here too, probably. Oops. So reset. Sorry, I didn't mean to put that one on there. Let me flatten these when they come in also. You might not like this solver. That shouldn't work. That should still work.
I think the solver is from Kangaroo 2, right?
Did I grab it? Yeah. Sorry. I should just use a regular solver from Kangaroo, yeah?
Yeah.
Sorry. This is what happens when they make two kangaroos. You get confused. You just click on them. Yes, so use the Kangaroo physics solver here. And drag your pressure, your anchors, and your springs in. You do want to flatten them. You right click and flatten them as well. And then you need to have a toggle on the simulation reset. Oh, the anchor points should go into anchor points, I guess. Not into forces. And geometry is obviously our mesh. We got to put our mesh in there. Into the geometry. Did I get that? Nope, one wrong. It's still giving me an error. I don't know which this error is. From goo to point. Which one am I missing? Anchors, pressure, springs. It looks the same to me.
Maybe there's something wrong with the data structure. Try to enter in all the goals.
Yeah, let me disconnect this.
And I think some of the components you are using are from old kangaroo. They don't exist anymore in Kangaroo 2.
Yeah, that's I didn't realize that because this is I am teaching you a code from like 3 years ago because I haven't worked with inflatables as much, and I just used the same code over and over. And yeah, I did not realize that you might not have some of these original kangaroo scripts, but Chao will also show you some other features, so maybe his will work better for that.
Yeah.
Have, for example, spring doesn't exist. Now you can use, I think, length line. And also for the pressure component, it takes a mesh directly. We don't need to construct the faces from 3 points.
Yeah, you can use the pressure mesh one that they had there. Right, this mesh pressure.
Virginia, those three are coming from Kangaroo or Kangaroo 2? Those three.
Apparently this one is from Kangaroo, not Kangaroo 2.
What about that one?
This one, no. This one pressure? This one should be the right pressure. And springs. Yeah, I don't know. Does this one even work? Probably not.
I don't think the spring component can work with the Kangaroo 2 engine.
Yeah, I think that's my problem, is the old springs.
And you can use the Control Alt and the left click on the component, and you will know where it's from.
Yeah. This Control R.
Control Alt and left click. Not right click, left click.
I'm trying to left click.
It's not working?
Nope. Oh, because I'm pressing Control Windows.
Oh,
My window key. I'm like, it's taking a screenshot? Yeah.
so it's from Kangaroo.
Regular Kangaroo. Yeah. Not Kangaroo 2. So you might not be able to get this one anyways. I just keep using the same old files over and over. So the fact that doesn't work for you, will probably, I can share this file with you, but you still probably can't open it because you won't have the Kangaroo installed. You'll have Kangaroo 2 installed. Yes. If you still have old Kangaroo, this file will work for you. But if you don't, it will not.
Well, maybe I can show them how the code looks like in Kangaroo 2.
Yeah.
I think
The
probably
updated
everyone,
version.
well, if you have a new version of Rhino, it's Kangaroo is already installed there, so you don't have to install. But give me 1 second. Let me download from this computer.
I'm sorry about that all. I don't usually teach inflatables, so this is why we are learning together. And I use old files for years and years. Don't update them.
Do you heard any echo at speak? No? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I just logging in from two different computers. So I'm just
Oh,
checking.
okay. I was like, why would we not be able to hear you?
Just give me a couple of minutes. Now. Okay, so you can see my screen now, right? So actually, this is the old tested models. I think we also saw them in our presentation earlier. I think it's going to work better for you because that's done by Cambridge 2 and you're also using Cambridge 2. I think they are not really kind of working smoothly between each other. But I think the basic logic Virginia has explained to you clearly. In order to inflate a form, you need to firstly translate it into a mesh, and then you can get all the edges from the mesh at the spring, and so they can have some kind of elasticity for you to inflate air, and then once you get the spring, you get the mesh, and then you get the pressure. That's the three basic things you need to inflate. Others like some like anchors or some other kind of floors you can also add, but that's kind of added on. It's not essential to make it work. So basically, we can see a lot of examples here, but I can go through them like later to explain what's the variations between them. But generally, if we look at one of them, so basically you need to go to Kangaroo 2, and then you need a pressure here, and also you need to go like the left, right? Yeah. So that's the spring and the pressure, and also you also need to get another one is the show the mesh itself. That's the three components you need. Anything else? So I think that's the three essential ones. And then after that, what you need is a solver. So you just get the solver here. And also, like Virginia showed, you need to one button for the reset, and then you need I think it's a boolean for that's a reset, and that's for you start and to and the inflation process. So that's basically the thing. And what you also need to do is to get a, yeah. So basically you got a lot of data from here, and you need to flatten each of them and but meanwhile organize them into a kind of a tree structure, and everything goes to the goal object. So that's basically what you need to get it work. So for others, they just need to give the data to these three functions. So let's just try run two here. And okay, and then yeah, this one. So okay, that's it. Yeah. So mesh to grab mesh, we can just show you, and that's this one. What you can do is to get a refined mesh from Kangaroo 2, but I think what you can also follow is Virginia showed you how to extract the points firstly, and then reconnect the points as the way you want. In that way, you can have more kind of control of how the mesh is organized. So that's another way. But I'm now just trying to try this kind of similar version of that. Okay, so can do two. Okay. So we find that. I think what I can also do is to okay. Yeah. So now you see the mesh is kind of really raw mesh. They only have how many that's 24 faces. But what you can do is to go to the settings. So here you can use these two functions to set the minimal the maximal length of each edge. So by control that, you can add in more faces, then you convert a graph to a mesh. So let's see, just try 10. Yeah, so you can see you got more faces here, but it's only about the resolution. And but if you have got too many faces, then the computation process is getting really slow. So it's depending on your computer power, and you can adjust the function here. So we got the mesh, and so the mesh is forced. It has to go here to show the mesh. To the solver, and then you need all the edges. So the simpler version of that is to go to this go mesh, and then this one edge lenses is the same as what I used here. If you want to use this one, you need to do what Virginia just showed you. You have to extract the edges as the way you want and get the lines into this function. But if you want to just try something simpler, this one can get all the edges from the mesh directly. So so these two, they are working in a similar way. So you can just replace that. And so that the pressure here, it also need a mesh to tell the software on what mesh you want to give the pressure. So also you need to give the mesh here. So that's just to do that. So you got the mesh itself, you got all the edges. That's the kind of giving the mesh elasticity. You can adjust the strength here. So let me just do the that, but that's still a number here. And also you need to give the strength to the pressure to like it. So you can just give any number at the beginning, and after you try to inflate it, you will see maybe you need more kind of stronger strength here and to keep it in certain scale, otherwise it may be just exploded. So that's something you need to try based on the size of the model you are working on. So now maybe let's explode. You see it's exploded, so maybe we just need to in this side of the model and see what I got here. Okay. So let's make it smaller. So okay. Let's give a larger number to the strength of all the edges, because that's the number you are setting for giving the strength to each other and to hold the geometry as a whole. So you can imagine the pressure and the spring, they are kind of working against each other. One is holding the geometry, one is to trying to exploit, to inflate it. That's to do. You see it's exploding. So every time you need to reset to go into the original geometry, and then you just click true and start it again. You see the boxes, they start to inflate, and at some point it's getting to his the balance between the strength of those all the edges and the power of the inflation. So you got your geometry as the inflated box. So so I love working fine so far. If I have questions. I think the basic logic is quite simple. It's just you need a mesh, you need a series of edge, and giving the edge a strength to hold the mesh together, and you then third one you give the pressure. But in between these batteries, you can add more kind of either it's from Kangaroo or just original Grasshopper to control it, in a more kind of diversified way. You can, for example, like Gina showed you earlier, you can extract the edges in certain way. Right now, you see. All process. So all the faces is a square, but you can also try to reorganize it into triangle or other kind of geometry you want. Because when the pattern of the edge become different, then the inflation the form could also have some variations to be generated. I think there's also some post process you need to follow is one. So here you see after that you got a lot of data from Kangaroo. Just one of them is the mesh. That's what we need to either rendering or make animations. So basically we need to follow this kind of post-process lines to clean the tree data. So you can find it here. So it's set and clean tree. So basically after and then you need another one. It's here. So let's see. So the first one. No, okay. So the first one is going to remove all kind of data which has no geometry in the tree, and then the second one well actually you don't have really to do the second one, because when you as long as you get the data you see. You see the first data tree is the mesh, and the second is a series of lines, which is the edge, and then the third one which is has nothing. So basically what I did here is to remove the third one, and then you only got two branch of the data from the tree data set. One is the mesh, and the second one is a series of edges. So then the last one just need to get this one for the tree, and you see they are so we got one mesh and all their edges, and what you need is just to get the mesh from here, so the parameters and mesh and here mesh. So just for the sake of computational power, undo everything and to start that. And also you can just stop it at any time you want, since it's if you actually it's gonna continuously to inflate, so you can at any point stop it at any point in between, and after that you just click that click the mesh and just take that, so you got your final mesh from Grasshopper to random. So that's the basic logic. Anyone has any questions?
I think for the post process, we can use the unflattened component to get the original data structure, and we can just pick what we want.
Yes, that's the purpose of the post process, because you can try different ways. put my mouse here, you see there's three different data from data tree sites, and what you need to know is where's the mesh, and as long as you can get a mesh, you can try different ways. That's not kind of related to kangaroo or any kind of technique of inflation. It's just a way of working with the data.
Yeah.
But thank you for pointing out. You can try different ways.
I think if you use a quad mesh, you also need to add the diagonal lines or the diagonal springs of the quad face, because then you can also simulate the shear forces. If you just use the mesh length, it will only takes these edges on the mesh into account and ignore these shear forces. So I think that's why Virginia, she triangulates the mesh to triangular mesh first.
Well, yes, I know you are from, well, you are working with FieldBlock, and I think you gonna have a lot of kind of insight about how the inflation works from the perspective of structural engineering, and that's also, I think that's very, very useful for us to understand. Yeah.
No, that's nothing about engineering. It's just a way to simulate cloth. So for the cloth, if you don't add this diagonal connection in the quad face, sometimes the cloth will collapse. It might not be a problem in the simple mesh to inflate a cube, but it might be a problem if you simulate more complicated things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's better to work with triangulated mesh. So either adding the diagonal or have a mesh that's already kind of triangulated, because that'll help you just get the forces to go at the different angles. And it'll just make it a little bit more accurate the way that it moves and expands. But this obviously, like Chao-Yu said, it'll work for these simple things. And I think for most of what you'll want to do for this course is fairly simple, since we only have 1 week and we want to have some prototypes made, and we want to look at more the way that it aggregates or combines together. So I think that if you can't triangulate it, it's okay too for maybe the level that we're doing in this course. But yeah, you're going to get more accuracy, and it's going to react more like a textile if it is, or a membrane if it is triangulated.
Okay, so maybe next step, I don't think we have, well, I don't think it's necessary to go through to go through all, well, to kind of to redo everything I showed here, but I would like to kind of just go through them with you and to see what kind of variations, well, in terms of the inflation you can add to this process to make it more kind of generate more interesting forms from this kind of really simple logic. But for sure, the first thing is how to get those mesh edges. You can try different ways, and maybe adding the diagonals or maybe triangulated. So that's the that's one way. That's one thing you can experiment in further ways. And so that's the thing here. You need to reconstruct you can try different ways, but the essential purpose is to get the edges and to give them the strength to hold the mesh together. So that's bring the first variations to us we can work with. It's the strength itself. Right now, I just gave the kind of a unified strength to all the edges across the mesh. But what you can try is to working with the grasshopper or working between Rhino and the grasshopper to get those edges particularly crucial to the form, and to give those edges maybe a larger strength or a smaller strength, so you can have different strengths or you can have strength differences across the mesh, and when you inflate it, it's gonna have different performance of the formation process. So I'm just going through a series of experiments and so here, what the way I worked with it is quite simple, but I think it's also easy to work automatically in Grasshopper. So what I did is so I can share the file to you later, and you can take a look. But right now, what I did here is since it's a 2D form. So when you inflate, you actually need some anchor points to hold it onto the ground. So that's also the thing I just showed to you. So you need to extract some points and make it an anchor point. And the anchor point is also need to go to this intertwine function and to become one tree data set to the Go server. So that's something you can add if you need, but that's not related to variations. So what I want to show you is to the second one. So the second one is I actually cut it the 2D square into two geometry. So when you convert it into meshes, it also becomes two mesh, right? So in that case, you got a really kind of open edge here you can work with. So you can, the way I work here is quite simple. I just extract the edge back to Rhino and then reconvert it into Grasshopper here. So you see that's the edge here. So in this case, I actually have two kind of springs. One is the let's say the normal edge across the whole mesh, and another is the particular edge I selected here. So you see when I give them the strings, I give two different numbers. One is 100, another is it's really huge. So it's basically like the anchor, but it performs different. So when I get all springs into this intertwine function and into the server, you click that. So you see, because that edge has more strength, so it's somehow hold the geometry there and making a crease for the geometry. So that's something you can work with. And also you see here another variation is I have two open edges. So in general, for the all edges, I have three categories. One is normal edge, the strength of which is 100, and I have like two different particular edges. One is the strength of which is really huge. Another is kind of in between these two categories. So if you inflate it, you see the two edges. They are also well, it's not really obvious, but you can try different another kind of set of number. But when you see the process, it actually works differently. One is going first, and another is going second. So in that sense, their strengths to against the pressure are also performed different. And obviously, you can also apply this logic to 3D. So you can have different kind of particular edges to give it more kind of strength to hold the geometry into certain way and to generate different interesting forms in that sense. So I think that's the first thing you can work with, and or you can play with. You can try different set of edge, and maybe you can have more particular edges across the mesh, and to give it constraints and to generate different interesting forms. So basically, these three is the flattened version, and this 4 is the three-dimensional version of the cube. Yeah. Another set of experiment I want to go through is here. You see, well, it's not as I mentioned. This is something I think you have to work in the simulation software, because the factory it's not impossible, but very difficult for them to connect different materials to create the inflated form. Okay, so here the first thing you need to understand how the kangaroo works with two or more or multiple meshes. You see that experiment is you have two kind of cube that are connected with each other, and then you convert it into meshes, and then get it into a kangaroo solver. The solver will melt all points in these kind of shared spaces. So they will be calculated as one mesh. But if you have a gap in between two meshes, they will be calculated as two separate meshes. In that sense, they will not connect with each other, but they will be overlapped with each other. So up there, so you see these two, they are kind of working against each other, and these two, they are overlap each other. So definitely this is the situation we can work with to simulate. But if you want to just try some to generate some interesting forms, you can also utilize this kind of overlap to try different variations to generate the form you want, but it's not really simulating the real condition of the inflation, aggregating the inflated part. So then either you work with different cubes, or you work with one cube. What you can also bring to the process is still related to the strength of edges, but when you think about the edges, it's not actually not only the edge, but when you, for example, if you just see well, the edge is also representing the faces of the mesh of the surface. So what I did here is a series of experiments. So what I basically did here is to get all the meshes out and then reselect them in the way I want. So I can regroup in the meshes into not the mesh, the edges into different to give them to recognize them in different categories. So you see here the two. So those the mesh on the bottom surface, and those the mesh on other faces except the bottom surface. So basically, in social sense is I just differentiate the faces into two different categories, and for each category I can give them different strengths. So in that sense, the inflated form is composed by different materials with different material properties. One is more kind of have more strength and it's kind of more has no kind of elasticity. Another is very kind of have more elasticity and could be deformed dramatically. So you have two different sets of that. And then once you work with the inflation process, you see the bottom, the upper part is inflated more, and the lower part is not really it's not really elastic itself. It's not very obvious, but maybe I can change the parameters somehow. Well, it's a matter of working with those numbers, but you see it start bending itself, and because the upper part has more elasticity, so the strings will kind of bending the whole geometry. It will continue, but eventually it could explode it, but you can see it's already kind of bending itself. And here's another variation, but working in the same way, just another kind of a more kind of volumetric geometries to see how the bending works. There's the second one is the same, and you can also see here these two is working with with just one inflated forms, and these two is working with kind of a series of aggregated inflated parts. So basically they and also you can try different numbers. Then the bending will show in different levels. So you see here is more kind of more obvious than the last one. You need to give it some time to kind of calculate and really bending itself. You see it start to bending itself, right? So it eventually becomes something like that. But I think what I didn't try here, but you can work out with, I remember last night when we talked about, I think Stevia or someone else. Well, you can also imagine if you have two, let me just close. So just imagine if you have two kind of layers of the cube, and instead of working to extract those edges, what you can work with to just directly give different strengths to these two layer of cubes. So it can also have this kind of bending. You can see how it works to expand better more. These lines more kind of obvious. To working with band geometry, because the upper part has more elasticity, so it will bend itself. And the last one is more kind of obvious geometric behaviors. So, for example, you have two flat sheets. They are kind of the edges are glued together to create an inflated form. But at the very beginning, you can fold it in certain ways, and after inflation, because it has its own volumetric geometry, then it will be unfolded in some way to create a final form. So I think that's basically kind of reflection of what we discussed in our presentation at the first session, but in a more kind of showing the technique behind those scenarios. So, well, I think it's not, in terms of the kangaroo, it's not complicated and difficult. It's just those kind of parameters you need to give to kangaroo, and the mesh you need to give to kangaroo. But based on that, what you can build on is to let's say have different ways of organizing the pattern of the mesh, and different ways of extract the mesh edge, and then give them try giving them different strengths, and to see how the inflation works. So to generate various of experiments to understand the inflation process. So I think that's the idea. And just see if you have any questions.
Yeah, I think the process is fairly simple. So it just comes down to how you use these tools, right? And what your idea is and what you want to make of it, because we've given you a few different potential directions to go, and they're all kind of similar. So I would just start by going over kind of the first one, just like inflating a cube, but then once you've done that, try to see what other things you can make and what kind of geometry you'll be interested in, and how I think from your sketches last night, you were already starting to think about possible ways to aggregate these modules together. So keep that in the back of your mind when you're creating these, like once it inflates, how can it connect together to make a larger structure? Since we want to think about these as being smaller module elements rather than just one large inflated bubble that you inhabit or just sits there. So definitely play with these forms and see what you can make. Are there any questions? So I have shared my files on our Discord and WeChat. They're out of date, and Chao will also send you his files so that you can follow along. You can also rewatch this video on YouTube. I think all of you have the YouTube channel link to be able to rewatch it and pause. So if there's something that Chao was showing or zoomed in on, we can always pause and relook at that feature in the video while you work on it.
Okay, maybe I can just send my file to Zoom as well, so you can get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think for our next session, we'll let you play with these files, and then you should come with some new geometry inflated. So take it a step further than just the cube that Chao was showing. But I think from your sketches that we saw yesterday, you know, a lot of you had very interesting things like spirals or triangles, and like bubble shapes, kind of like Voronoi or hexagon shapes. So try to look at those different shapes that you were looking, and try to get some of those to inflate. And how would you do that? Even like when we looked at the water cube, there was this discussion of it's actually a frame with a bubble inside. So you can use the technique that Chao is showing with the kind of constraint to make a sort of frame and then inflate within that. So take those ideas and test them out.
Yeah, maybe we can have a short break and any questions? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and so next session is more about troubleshooting and want to share any ideas. We can also have further discussions. And for those of you in Europe, if you want to get sleep, it's also okay. And we can also meet again at the evening session today at 7 p.m. China time. Yeah, so that's the plan.
Does that sound good? Oh, Thomas has a question.
Yes, a small question. Is that I'm in Chile and I have like a deferred time. Like it's 7, I mean, it's 10 o'clock at night here. In the morning session, is it always going to be like small discussions, or is it going to be like a lecture or?
Yeah, so the schedule is, it's kind of built because I'm also in the States, I'm in Michigan. So I think, Thomas, you and I are in the same time zone.
Okay.
And so the morning session is just the catch up and chat session. So we can see the work for the most part. And then these night sessions for us, which is morning for everyone in China, is more the tutorial session. So we don't record, we're not also going to record the 7 a.m. sessions or 7 p.m. session because it's going to be like more casual discussion. And only the tutorials are recorded for the online audience and for you to rewatch it, because you probably don't need to rewatch looking at everyone's sketches and stuff is maybe not as fun. So that is more just our discussion time. That's also a good time, like I think right now, as you're getting into Kangaroo and Grasshopper, some of you are very new at it, so you might come like work all day or whatever and come back with some questions or whatever now that you've tried a few things out. So we'll also give technical support at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, maybe everyone just needs some time to.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, we can just take a break and let you work. Also, you can keep discussing in the Discord and in the WeChat group if you have questions as well, because we are there also, as well as your colleagues that some are very knowledgeable on certain things as well. So.
Yeah. Maybe just let's come back like half an hour at 11 and see if everyone looks have any questions. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, you can just speak in this Zoom. They are just around our computer.
Yep. So see you soon.